I was born in 1958 in a big white house on Cliffside Lane in Bar Harbor, Maine. The house had columns out front, a wide porch, and windows that looked out over the ocean. People would stop their cars to look at it. They thought it was beautiful. I didn't think so. Inside, it was quiet all the time. No music, no yelling, no laughter. My father, Charles Winthrop II, was a judge. He wore suits every day, even on weekends. He never hugged me. He never asked me how school was. When I talked too loud at dinner, he'd look at me like I'd done something wrong. My mother, Caroline, was always dressed up, even when she was just sitting in the living room. She smelled like perfume and never held me. She'd smile at me, but her eyes stayed far away. I used to sit at the table and wait for her to say something nice. She never did. I learned early that if I stayed quiet, I wouldn't get in trouble. If I asked for something, I got told no or just silence. I learned not to ask. When I was 5, I drew a picture of our family. Me, my dad, my mom, and a dog we didn't even have. I showed it to my dad. He looked at it, said nice, and put it on the fridge. Then he took it down the next day because he said it was childish. I didn't cry. I just learned to keep my drawings to myself. The house had a dining room with a long table that could seat 12. We ate there every night. My father sat at the head. My mother sat to his right. I sat across from them. We didn't talk much. We just ate. My father would ask me about school, but only because it was expected. He didn't care what I said. If I told him I got an A in math, he'd say, "Good." If I told him I got a B, he'd say, "You should try harder." My mother never asked me anything. She'd look at her plate and move her food around. Sometimes she'd leave the table before we finished eating. She'd say she had a headache. I never saw her leave the house unless it was for a church event or a tea with other judges' wives. I used to watch her from the stairs. She'd sit in her room all day, reading magazines, brushing her hair, or staring out the window. I didn't know if she was sad or just tired. I didn't ask. I learned that asking didn't help. It only made things worse. I learned that being quiet was the only way to stay safe. I remember one time I tried to tell my father I didn't like my new shoes. They pinched my toes. I said it softly, right after dinner. He looked up from his newspaper. "You don't need to like them. You need to wear them." That was it. No explanation, no choice. I wore them until they broke. I never complained again. I learned that my feelings didn't matter. My wants didn't matter. Even my voice didn't matter. I started speaking less and less. I stopped telling my teachers when I didn't understand something. I stopped raising my hand in class. I stopped telling my friends when I was upset. I learned to nod, to smile, to say yes, even when I meant no. At school, they called me Quiet Emily. My teachers said I was well-behaved. My father said I was proper. I didn't know what any of those words meant. I just knew that if I stayed silent, I wouldn't get punished. If I stayed small, I wouldn't be noticed. And if I wasn't noticed, I was safe. That's what I thought then. I didn't know then that silence wasn't safety. It was just another kind of prison. I didn't have toys in my room. My mother said toys were unrefined. So I had books. Old books with no pictures. I read them because I had nothing else to do. I read about kings and queens, about explorers, about people who traveled far away. I imagined myself in those places, not because I wanted to escape. I just wanted to be somewhere else, anywhere else. My father had a study on the second floor. I wasn't allowed in unless he called me. One day, when I was 6, I went in while he was at work. I opened his desk drawer. I found a letter. It was addressed to him from a woman I didn't know. It said, "I miss the way you used to laugh." I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it meant, but I put it back. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to be the girl who snooped. I didn't want to be the girl who asked questions. I closed the drawer. I walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't cry. I just went to my room and sat on the floor. I didn't move for an hour. I didn't know why, but I felt like I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see. And I knew even then that I would never speak about it. Not to anyone. Not ever. I didn't have friends over. My father said our home was not for casual visitors. So I played alone. I built towers with blocks. I drew pictures of houses that looked nothing like ours. I made up stories about girls who lived in cottages by the sea and talked to their mothers every day. I didn't know those girls were imaginary. I thought they were real. I thought maybe somewhere, someone had a mother who asked how their day was. Maybe somewhere, someone had a father who hugged them after dinner. I didn't know if those things were real. I just knew they weren't in my house. When I was 8, I asked my mother if we could go to the beach. She said, "We don't go to the beach. We have the ocean right outside." I didn't know what she meant. We never went outside the house unless we had to. I didn't know other families had picnics or took walks or played catch in the yard. I didn't know it was normal. I thought this silence was just how life was. I thought being quiet, being small, being invisible was the only way to survive. I didn't know then that I was already broken. I just knew I had to keep my mouth shut. By the time I was 10, I didn't speak much at all. Not to my parents, not to the maids, not to the neighbors who waved at me from their cars. I answered questions with one word. Yes, no, okay. I didn't laugh unless someone else laughed first. I didn't cry unless I was alone in my room. I learned to move quietly through the house. I learned to eat quickly. I learned to disappear into the background. My father never yelled. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any shout. My mother never hugged me. She didn't need to. Her absence was louder than any word. I didn't know love was supposed to be loud. I didn't know it was supposed to be warm. I only knew it was quiet. And I only knew that if I stayed quiet, I wouldn't be punished. That's all I ever learned in that house. That silence was safety. That my voice didn't matter. And that was the first thing I ever learned about being a girl in my family. It was the first lesson, and it was the one I carried with me for the rest of my life. I was 8 years old when my mother left. Not in a big fight. Not with a suitcase and a note. She just stopped being there. One morning, she didn't come down for breakfast. The house felt different. Too quiet, like the air had been pulled out. My father told me she was going away for a while to get better. He said she had nerves. He didn't say what that meant. I didn't ask. I learned early that asking didn't help. I went to her room. Her clothes were still in the closet. Her perfume bottle sat on the dresser, half empty. I touched it. It smelled like flowers and something sad. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring. The next day, the piano in the parlor was covered with a big white cloth. I asked my father why. He said, "We don't need music anymore." That was it. No explanation. No, she won't be coming back. Just silence. I didn't see her again for 2 years. I got letters from the sanatorium. They were short. "Dear Caroline, your daughter is well. She misses you." I didn't know if she wrote them or if someone else did. I kept them in a shoebox under my bed. I never wrote back. I didn't know what to say. Every night after everyone went to sleep, I went down the stairs. I wore socks so my footsteps wouldn't make noise. I opened the parlor door slowly. The piano was still there under the cloth. I pulled the cloth back just enough to see the keys. I sat on the bench. I didn't play. I just pressed the keys with my fingertips, very lightly. No sound came out, just the feeling of the keys under my fingers. I did this every night. Sometimes I pressed the same note over and over. Sometimes I tried to play the little song she used to play for me before bed. I couldn't remember the whole thing. I only remembered the first 3 notes. I'd press them, then stop. I didn't want anyone to hear me. If my father found out, he would have locked the room. I knew he would. I didn't want to get in trouble. I just wanted to feel something. I wanted to feel like she was still there, even if it was just the ghost of music. I started writing letters to her. I didn't send them. I wrote them on notebook paper. I wrote, "Mom, I miss your voice." I wrote, "I don't like the new cook. She makes the potatoes too dry." I wrote, "I got a B in spelling. I tried hard." I wrote, "The piano is covered. Why?" I wrote, "Are you coming home?" I wrote all of it. Then I folded the papers and put them inside the piano bench. I didn't know if she would ever find them. I didn't care. I just needed to say them out loud, even if it was only in my head. I wrote until my hand hurt. I wrote until I cried, but I didn't make a sound. I wiped my face with my sleeve. I put the letters in the bench. I covered the piano again. I went back to bed. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want them to think I was strange. I didn't want them to think I was weak. I knew if I showed how much I missed her, they would think I was like her. And I didn't want to be like her. That summer, I made a promise to myself. I swore I would never end up like my mother. I would never let myself be quiet so much that people forgot I was there. I would never let sadness take over. I would never let anyone put me in a room and say I had nerves. I would be strong. I would be loud if I needed to be. I would speak up. I would never let my voice disappear. I would never let anyone tell me I was too much or too little. I would be the opposite of her. I would be the one who stayed, the one who held on, the one who didn't vanish. I didn't know how to do it yet. I didn't know how to be strong, but I knew I had to try. I carried that promise with me every day. When my father told me to sit still, I sat still, but I didn't stop thinking. When he told me not to ask questions, I didn't ask out loud, but I asked inside. I was still a child, but I was already learning how to survive. I didn't know it then, but that promise was the first thing I ever built for myself. It was the only thing that kept me from falling apart. I didn't go to her funeral. My father said it wasn't necessary. "She's not really here," he said. "She's been gone for a long time." I didn't argue. I just nodded. I wore a black dress I didn't like. I stood in the back of the church with my father and the other people who didn't know her. I didn't cry. I didn't feel like crying. I felt empty. I thought about the letters I had written. I thought about the silent piano. I thought about how she had been alive one day and gone the next, and no one seemed to care. I thought about how I had been trying to be strong, but I didn't know if I was strong enough. I didn't know if I would ever be. That night, I went to the parlor again. I pulled back the cloth. I pressed the keys once more. I didn't play a song. I just pressed one key, the one that sounded the clearest. I listened to the silence after. I didn't know if I would ever hear music again, but I knew I would never stop remembering her, not because I wanted to, because I had to, so I wouldn't forget what not to become. 2 years later, I was 10. The piano was still covered. My father never spoke about her again. He didn't bring her name up. He didn't show me pictures. He didn't say she was gone. He just acted like she had never been there. I didn't tell anyone about the letters. I didn't tell anyone about the nights I went to the piano. I didn't tell anyone about the promise I made. I kept it all inside. I kept it like a secret weapon. I told myself, if I ever feel like giving up, I'll remember that I promised not to be like her. I didn't know if that promise was enough, but it was the only thing I had. And when I felt small, when I felt invisible, when I felt like I was disappearing, I would go to the parlor. I would touch the keys. I would press them softly, and I would remember, I am not her. I will not be her. I will not be forgotten. I will not be erased. I am still here, and I will make sure everyone knows it. I was 14 when I started going to the boathouse. It was old, wooden, leaning a little to the side, with a rusted lock and a smell of fish and wet wood. No one ever went there. My father said it was unsafe. My mother never even knew it existed. I'd sneak out after dinner when the house was quiet and walk down the path behind the garden. I'd sit on the broken bench inside and just breathe. No one yelled at me. No one told me to be quiet. No one looked at me like I was a mistake. That's where I felt like I could be me. Not Eleanor Winthrop, the judge's daughter. Just me. One day, Thomas Riley was there. He was 16, the son of the man who fixed the fence and mowed the lawn. He had calluses on his hands from working, and his shirt was always dirty. He didn't wear a suit. He didn't talk like the boys at school. He looked at me and said, "You're not supposed to be here." I didn't answer. He sat down on the other end of the bench. He didn't ask who I was. He just said, "Are you okay, Ellie?" That was the first time anyone ever asked me that. Not, "How was school?" or "Did you finish your homework?" but, "Are you okay?" I started going back. He was always there. We didn't talk much at first, just sat. Then we started talking. He told me his dad got paid in cash and they never had enough. He told me he wanted to be a mechanic, but his dad said he should work on the land. I told him I hated my room. I told him I hated the way my father never looked at me. He didn't laugh. He didn't say I was being dramatic. He just listened. One day, he gave me a cigarette. I didn't know how to smoke. I coughed. He laughed. Not at me, but with me. I liked that laugh. We kissed once. It was quick. I didn't know what I was doing. He didn't either. It felt like the first time I wasn't alone. I didn't think about it after. I just went back to the boathouse. A week later, my father came out with a shotgun. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, looking at Thomas. Thomas didn't move. My father told him to get out. Right now. He didn't say why. He didn't need to. The next day, Thomas's father was gone. The house was empty. The truck was gone. Thomas was gone. No one told me where. No one said he was fired. No one said he was kicked out. But I knew. I never saw him again. I didn't cry. I just stopped going to the boathouse. I stopped talking. I started skipping meals. I felt sick every morning. I thought it was the flu. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to be punished. I didn't want to be sent away. I waited. It got worse. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I started wearing loose sweaters. I thought if I didn't say anything, it would go away. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to ask. I didn't have a friend. I didn't have a mother. I was alone. I stole money from my father's desk drawer. I took $20. I walked to the bus station. I took a bus to Portland. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even know what I was going to do. I found a clinic. It was a small building with a sign that said, Women's Health. I walked in. I didn't know what to say. The nurse asked me my name. I said Ellie. She asked me how old I was. I said 15. She didn't ask where my parents were. She didn't ask if I was alone. She just said, come with me. I sat in a cold room. There was a table, a light. A doctor came in. She didn't ask questions. She just said, you're pregnant. I nodded. She said, you have choices. I didn't know what that meant. She said, you can keep it or you can end it. I didn't know what keeping it meant. I didn't know what ending it meant. I just knew I couldn't go home with a baby. I couldn't go home at all. I said, I want to end it. She asked if I was sure. I said yes. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just said yes. She told me to lie down. I closed my eyes. I didn't think about Thomas. I didn't think about my father. I didn't think about anything. I just waited for it to be over. When it was done, I sat up. The nurse gave me a blanket. She said, take care of yourself. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything. I walked back to the bus station. I took the bus home. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't look in the mirror for a week. I wore the same sweater. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I just sat in my room. I didn't regret it. I still don't. But I wish someone had asked me what I wanted. Not what I should do. Not what was best. Not what was right. Just, what do you want, Ellie? No one ever asked. And that's the part that stays with me. Not the pain. Not the clinic. Not the blood. Just the silence. No one ever asked. I went to Barnard College in New York City because I thought it was my way out. I didn't care about the classes much, but I liked being away from the house. No one there knew who my father was. No one looked at me like I was a mistake waiting to be corrected. I wore jeans and sweaters. I ate in the cafeteria with other girls. I stayed up late talking about books and boys. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. But my father found out I was spending money on books and movies, and not just on textbooks. He called me into his study. He didn't yell. He never yelled. He just said, you're not going back next semester unless you come home and marry Robert Langston. I asked why. He said Robert's family had money, reputation, connections. He said I was lucky he was even considering me. He said if I didn't do it, I'd be cut off. No more money, no more support, no more education. I didn't cry. I just sat there and thought about how I'd been living on his terms my whole life. I didn't have a job. I didn't have savings. I didn't have friends who could help me. I had no way to pay for school on my own. So I said yes. I said yes, because I was tired of being afraid. I said yes because I thought if I did what he wanted, maybe he'd finally stop looking at me like I was a burden. I didn't think about Robert. I didn't think about love. I thought about food, about rent, about being able to finish school. I thought about being free from his control. I didn't realize I was just trading one cage for another. The wedding was at the Langston Estate in Connecticut. Everything was white and gold. The church had stained glass windows, the tables were covered in lace, the champagne was poured into crystal flutes. I wore a dress that cost more than my father made in a month. My mother didn't come. She was still in the sanatorium, still not well enough to leave. I wore her pearls. I didn't have a veil. I didn't have a bouquet. I just held my hands together and tried not to shake. Robert looked nice in his tuxedo. He smiled when he said his vows. He kissed me on the cheek. He didn't look at me like he loved me. He looked at me like he was checking something off a list. After the ceremony, we had a reception with 300 people. Everyone clapped. Everyone smiled. Everyone said how beautiful the bride looked. I didn't feel beautiful. I felt like I was on display, like I was a piece of furniture someone had bought to show off. Robert's father gave a speech about business and legacy. His mother cried and said I was a good match for her son. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and smiled and drank my champagne. I didn't taste it. I didn't taste anything. I just kept thinking, this is it. This is the life now. There's no turning back. Robert was quiet. He wasn't mean. He wasn't cruel. He just didn't seem to see me. He came home every night. He ate dinner with me. He talked about work. He asked me how my day was. I said fine. He said good. We didn't hug. We didn't kiss. We didn't talk about feelings. He didn't ask me what I wanted. He didn't ask me if I was happy. He bought me clothes. He gave me jewelry. He paid for a trip to Europe. He said it was a gift. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything. I just put on the clothes, wore the jewelry, took the pictures. I learned to smile when he came home. I learned to look pretty when we went out. I learned to be quiet when he was tired. I learned to never ask for anything. I didn't want to be a bother. I didn't want to be the wife who made demands. I didn't want to be the woman who reminded him he was stuck with me. I thought if I was perfect enough, quiet enough, invisible enough, maybe he'd start to care. Maybe he'd start to look at me like I was real. But he never did. He treated me like a decoration, like a fine vase on the shelf. You admire it, you dust it, you don't touch it unless you have to. I started to believe him. I started to believe I wasn't worth more than that. After all, my father had told me I was too much, and Robert never said I was enough. So I figured I must be not enough, and if I wasn't enough, then I had no right to want more. I didn't have friends in the city. Robert's friends were all like him, rich, quiet, proper. They talked about investments, about their children's schools, about which charity to donate to. I didn't know how to talk about any of that. I didn't know how to be one of them. I tried. I read the papers. I listened. I smiled when they laughed. But I never felt like I belonged. I didn't tell Robert I was lonely. I didn't tell him I missed my college friends. I didn't tell him I hated the big house with its silent halls. I didn't tell him I cried at night after he went to sleep. I didn't tell him because I thought he wouldn't care. I didn't tell him because I thought he'd think I was weak. I didn't tell him because I had already learned that asking for help meant you were broken. So I stayed quiet. I cooked meals he liked. I kept the house clean. I wore the clothes he bought. I went to the parties. I smiled. I nodded. I did what I was supposed to do, and I believed that was enough. I believed that if I did everything right, maybe one day he'd look at me and say, "You're good." But he never did. He never said it. He never needed to. He just kept treating me like I was a possession, and I kept letting him. Because I had been taught for so long that I didn't deserve more. I had been taught that being quiet, being obedient, being invisible was the only way to survive. And I didn't know how to be anything else. I got pregnant the second year of our marriage. I didn't tell Robert right away. I waited a month. I was scared. I didn't know if he'd be happy. I didn't know if he'd be angry. I didn't know if he'd even care. When I finally told him, he just said, "Good." That was it. He didn't hug me. He didn't smile. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just said, Good. Then he went back to reading his newspaper. I sat there holding my stomach thinking, this is my child. This is the only thing I've ever made that's mine. I didn't tell him I was scared. I didn't tell him I was excited. I didn't tell him I was alone. I just kept quiet. When the baby came, a boy named David, Robert came to the hospital. He stood by the bed. He looked at the baby. He said, "He looks like you." Then he left. He didn't hold him. He didn't kiss me. He didn't stay. I held David in my arms and cried. I cried because I was so tired. I cried because I felt so alone. I cried because I didn't know how to be a mother without being a wife. I didn't know how to love a child when I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to be someone's mother when I had never been someone's daughter. I didn't know how to be anything but what they told me to be. And I kept being it, because I didn't know how to stop. I stayed married to Robert for 12 years. We had another child, a girl named Margaret. He paid for their schools. He sent them to summer camps. He came to their recitals. He smiled for the pictures. He never asked them if they liked their teachers. He never asked me if I was happy. He never asked me if I wanted to go anywhere. He never asked me what I thought. I stopped asking myself what I wanted. I stopped thinking about it. I told myself I was fine. I told myself I had everything I needed. I had a home. I had children. I had a husband who never yelled. I had money. I had respect. I had silence. And I told myself that silence was peace. But it wasn't. It was just another kind of prison. I didn't leave Robert because I thought he was bad. I stayed because I thought I was nothing without him. I thought if I left, I'd be nothing. I thought if I spoke up, I'd be too much. I thought if I asked for more, I'd be punished. I thought if I tried to be free, I'd be alone. And I was so tired of being alone. So I stayed. I stayed in the gilded cage. I wore the pearls. I drank the champagne. I smiled for the photos. And I told myself I was lucky. But I wasn't lucky. I was trapped. And I didn't even know how to want out. Margaret was born in 1967. I was 29. She came into the world screaming, loud and strong, just like my father used to be when he was mad. She had my eyes, dark and wide, and the same stubborn jawline he had. From the first day, I knew she was going to be tough. She didn't cry much. She stared at you like she was already judging whether you were worth her time. I loved her hard. I fed her, changed her, sang to her, held her all night when she wouldn't sleep. I didn't sleep much either. I was scared. Scared she'd grow up like me. Quiet, invisible, always waiting for someone else to decide what was okay. I made sure she had the best clothes, the best toys, the best schools. I talked to her all the time. I asked her what she thought about everything. I wanted her to know her voice mattered. I didn't want her to grow up thinking silence was safety. I didn't want her to end up like me. Thomas came 3 years later. He was smaller, quieter. He didn't cry like Margaret. He just looked at you with those soft brown eyes, like he was trying to figure out how the world worked. When I held him for the first time, something inside me broke. Not in a bad way, in a way that made me feel things I hadn't felt in years. He reminded me of Thomas Riley. Not his face, not his voice, but the way he moved. The way he'd look at you like he trusted you even if he didn't know you. I thought about the boy in the boathouse. I thought about the letters I wrote and never sent. I thought about the baby I never had. And suddenly, Thomas was my chance to fix it. I didn't want him to be alone. I didn't want him to feel like he didn't matter. So I held him more. I talked to him more. I didn't let him out of my sight. I went to every school play, every soccer game, every parent-teacher meeting. I made sure he had snacks in his backpack, extra socks, a clean shirt. I kissed him every morning before school. I kissed him every night before bed. I told him I loved him 100 times a day. I did it because I needed him to know he was safe. I needed him to know he was loved. But I think I did it more for me than for him. I started keeping secrets, not big ones, little ones. Like the way I'd go into his room when he was at school and just sit on his bed and breathe. Like the way I kept his first tooth in a little box under my dresser. Like the way I cried when he got his first cut and I held him too tight. I didn't tell Michael any of it. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want anyone to think I was being weird. I didn't want anyone to say I was too much, so I kept it all inside. But the biggest secret was the letter. It came in 1982. Thomas was 12. I was opening the mailbox after grocery shopping. There was an envelope, no return address, just my name written in messy handwriting. I opened it in the kitchen while the groceries sat on the counter. It was from Thomas Riley. He wrote, "Hi, Ellie. I don't know if you remember me. I was the kid who worked for your dad. I thought about you a lot over the years. I wonder if you ever thought about me. I wonder if you ever wondered what might have been." I sat down. I didn't move for an hour. My hands shook. I read it 3 times. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just folded it and put it in the back of my drawer. I didn't tell Michael. I didn't tell Margaret. I didn't tell Thomas. I just kept it. I kept it because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I still cared. I didn't know if I was still the girl who sat in the boathouse and pressed the piano keys without sound. I didn't know if I was still anyone at all. I started watching Thomas even more. I watched him walk to the bus stop. I watched him talk to his friends. I watched him eat his dinner. I listened to every word he said. If he came home late, I asked where he'd been. If he got a bad grade, I made him redo the homework until it was perfect. If he got a scratch on his knee, I cleaned it 3 times. I didn't want him to get hurt. I didn't want him to feel what I felt. I didn't want him to lose something because he didn't speak up. I told him he could tell me anything, anything. I meant it. But I never told him about the letter. I never told him about the boy. I never told him about the baby. I never told him about the silence in my house growing up. I kept it all locked inside. I thought if I protected him enough, if I loved him enough, he'd never have to carry that weight. I thought if I was strong enough for him, he'd never have to be afraid. But I didn't realize I was smothering him. I didn't realize I was giving him my fear instead of my strength. I didn't realize I was teaching him to be quiet, too. I was trying to fix my past, but I was just making his future heavier. I didn't know how to be a mother who let go. I didn't know how to say, "Go, be your own person." I only knew how to say, "Stay. Let me take care of you." I was afraid if I didn't hold on tight, he'd disappear like the boy in the boathouse. I was afraid if I didn't control everything, something bad would happen again. So I watched. I listened. I asked questions. I checked his room. I looked through his backpack. I asked his teachers if he was okay. I asked his friends if he was happy. I didn't trust him to be okay on his own. I didn't trust myself to be okay if he was. I didn't trust anyone else to protect him the way I could. I didn't realize I was giving him the same thing my father gave me, a cage wrapped in love. I thought I was saving him, but I was just making him carry my pain. I didn't know how to let him be a boy. I only knew how to make him a project, a chance to fix what I couldn't fix in myself. And I kept the letter. I kept it in the bottom of my sock drawer. I took it out sometimes when no one was home. I read it. I touched the paper. I smelled it. I didn't cry. I just sat there. I didn't know if I was still in love with him. I didn't know if I was still in love with the idea of him. I didn't know if I was still in love with the version of me that could have been. I just knew I couldn't throw it away. It was the only thing I had left that didn't belong to Michael. That didn't belong to my father. That belonged only to me. That summer, Thomas turned 13. He started spending more time at his friend's house. He stopped asking me to drive him everywhere. He started coming home later. He didn't tell me where he was going. He didn't tell me what he was doing. One night, I found a note in his room. It was a drawing, a stick figure of a boy holding hands with another boy. Underneath, it said, "We're going to be friends forever." I didn't know who it was for. I didn't know if it was from a girl or a boy. I didn't know if it meant anything, but I took it. I folded it. I put it in my drawer with the letter. I didn't say anything to him. I didn't ask. I didn't confront him. I didn't tell Michael. I just kept it. I kept everything. I kept the letter. I kept the drawing. I kept the first pair of shoes he ever wore. I kept the report card with the A+ in math. I kept the button he lost from his jacket. I kept them all because I was afraid if I let go of the things, I'd lose him. I was afraid if I didn't hold on, he'd vanish like Thomas Riley. I was afraid if I didn't control it all, I'd fail again. So I kept the secrets. I kept the letters. I kept the drawings. I kept the silence. And I didn't realize I was teaching him that love meant holding on too tight, that love meant never letting go, that love meant being afraid. And I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to be anything else. Robert died on a Tuesday. I found him sitting in his study chair, his head tilted back, his eyes open, his hands resting on the desk like he was just taking a nap. The doctor said it was a heart attack. He had no warning, no pain, just gone. I didn't cry right away. I felt numb. I kept thinking about how I had made his coffee that morning. He had kissed me on the forehead and said, "Thanks, Ellie. You're the best." I believed him. I still believed him. The funeral was quiet. People came. They said nice things. They patted my shoulder. They told me I was strong. I nodded. I smiled. I wore the black dress I had worn to my mother's funeral. I didn't feel like a widow. I felt like someone had stolen my life and left me holding the empty clothes. After the funeral, I had to go through his things. I did it slowly. I didn't want to, but I knew I had to. I started with his closet. I took out his suits, his ties, his shoes. I folded them neatly. I put them in boxes. I thought I was doing it for him. I thought I was being a good wife. Then I went to his desk drawer. I opened it. I found his tax papers, his old receipts, his bank statements. I didn't mean to look. I was just organizing. But then I saw it. A statement from the bank. A withdrawal. $15,000. In March. Then another. $20,000 in June. Then another. $18,000 in October. All of them were labeled miscellaneous. I didn't understand. We didn't spend that much. We never did. I looked at the dates. March, June, October. The same months every year. I checked the account number. It wasn't ours. It was a different account. I didn't know what it was. I called the bank. I told them I was Robert's wife. I asked for details. They wouldn't give me anything over the phone. I went to the branch. I sat across from a man in a suit. He looked at me like I was crazy. I showed him the statement. He looked at it. He looked at me. He said, "Mrs. Langston, this is a private account. We can't discuss it." I stood up. I said, "He's dead. I'm his wife. Give me the name of the account holder." He looked at his computer. He typed something. He looked up. He said, "It's under the name of Carol Whitmore." I didn't know that name. I asked, "Where is this account?" He gave me an address. Waterville. Upstate. I didn't know where that was. I didn't care. I drove there the next day. I didn't tell anyone. I just got in the car and drove. I didn't stop. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just drove. I found the house on a quiet street, a small brick house with a white fence. A car was parked in the driveway. A minivan. A boy's bicycle leaned against the garage. I stood across the street for an hour. I watched. I saw a woman come out. She was about my age. She had dark hair, tied back. She wore jeans and a sweater. She looked tired. She picked up the newspaper. She walked back inside. I didn't move. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew I had to see it. Then I saw them, 2 boys. They came out of the house. One was tall, with Robert's jawline. The other was smaller, with Robert's eyes. My stomach dropped. I knew. I didn't need to ask. I knew. I went back to my car. I sat there. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat. I thought about Thomas. My son. My beautiful, quiet Thomas. He had Robert's eyes. He had Robert's smile. He had Robert's silence. I thought about the times Robert would come home late and say he had to work. I thought about the trips he took, the weekends he disappeared. I thought about how I never asked where he was going. I thought about how I never questioned it. I thought about how I always believed him. I thought about how I was his wife, his real wife, and he had another family, another wife, 2 sons. He had been living with them for 20 years. I drove back home. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. I just sat in the kitchen. I looked at the clock. I counted the hours. I thought about Robert. I thought about the woman. I thought about the boys. I thought about Thomas. I thought about how I had raised him, how I had loved him, how I had protected him, and how he had been raised by someone else, too. Someone else who called him son. Someone else who kissed him goodnight. Someone else who knew him better than I did. I felt like I was going to be sick. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat. I felt like I had been punched so hard I couldn't feel anything anymore. I didn't feel grief. I felt rage, cold, heavy, burning rage. How dare he? How dare he make me a widow in public and a fool in private? I didn't know which hurt more. That he had lied. That he had lived 2 lives. Or that he had given one of those lives to my own son. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I just sat. And I knew right then that I would never trust again. Not him. Not anyone. Not even myself. After Robert died, I didn't leave the house for 3 weeks. I just sat in the living room, in the same chair he used to sit in. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't eat unless someone brought food to me. I didn't shower every day. I wore the same robe for days. My children called. David asked if I wanted to come over. Jessica left casseroles on the porch. I didn't open the door. I didn't answer. I felt like I was already dead. I kept thinking, was it my fault? I was quiet. I didn't talk much. I didn't hug him. I didn't ask him how his day was. I just made his coffee, ironed his shirts, and waited for him to come home. Maybe that's why he looked for someone else. Maybe he didn't leave because he didn't love me anymore. Maybe he left because I made him feel invisible. I kept replaying every moment, every silence, every time I didn't say anything when he asked, "Are you okay?" I said yes. I always said yes. But I never meant it. I thought if I stayed quiet, I wouldn't make things worse. But now I knew I made everything worse. I started having pain in my chest. Not heart pain. Deep inside, like something was pressing on my lungs. I went to the doctor. They did tests. They said it was breast cancer. Stage 2. I didn't cry when they told me. I just nodded. I thought, maybe this is what I deserve. I had been pretending for so long. Maybe my body was finally telling me the truth. I started chemo. I lost my hair. I got sick every time I ate. I felt weak all the time. I didn't care. I didn't comb my hair. I didn't wear makeup. I didn't care how I looked. My daughter Margaret came every day to sit with me. She didn't say much. She just held my hand. One night after the chemo, I couldn't sleep. I got up. I put on my robe. I walked outside. I didn't think about why I was going. I just walked. I went to the rose garden. It was dark. The moon was out. I found a shovel in the shed. I started digging. Right next to the white roses I had planted when Robert and I got married. I dug deep. My arms hurt. My hands were covered in dirt. I didn't stop until the hole was big enough. I went back inside. I took out Robert's letters. All of them. The ones he wrote to me before we got married. The ones he wrote after we moved to the big house. The ones he wrote after the cancer diagnosis, saying he was sorry he couldn't be there for me. I took his watch. The one he wore every day. The one he wore the day he died. I took the bank statements I had hidden in my drawer. The ones showing the money he sent to that woman. I took the photo of him and that woman at the beach. I took everything. I put it all in a shoebox. I carried it outside. I put it in the hole. I covered it with dirt. I pressed it down with my hands. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, staring at the mound of dirt. Margaret came out. She saw me. She saw the hole. She saw the dirt on my hands. She asked, "What are you doing, Mother?" I didn't tell her the truth. I couldn't. I didn't want her to know how broken I was. I didn't want her to know I had been hiding all of it. I looked at her and said, "Planting something new." She didn't say anything. She just sat next to me. We sat there for an hour. I didn't know if she believed me. I didn't care. That night, while I lay in bed, I made a promise to myself. No more secrets. Not from my children. Not from myself. Even if it destroyed me. Even if it broke my family. Even if it made me lose everything I had left. I was done pretending. I was done hiding. I was done being quiet. I would tell the truth, no matter what it cost me. The next morning, I called David. He came over right away. He saw the hole in the garden. He didn't ask about it. He just sat with me at the kitchen table. I told him everything. About Robert's second family, about the money, about the letters, about the photos, about how I found out, about how I let it go on for so long without saying anything. I told him about the woman's name. I told him about Waterville. I told him about the 2 sons. I told him about the night I found the bank statements. I told him how I didn't confront him because I was scared. I told him how I blamed myself. I told him how I thought I wasn't enough. He didn't interrupt. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just listened. When I finished, he sat there for a long time. Then he said, "Mom, I didn't know any of this." I said, "I know." He said, "I'm sorry you carried this alone." I said, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." He got up. He hugged me. He didn't say anything else. He just held me. That was the first time in years I felt like someone really saw me. Not the wife, not the widow, just me. The next day I called Margaret. I told her the same thing. I told her about the letters, about the watch, about the money. I told her how I buried it all in the garden. She cried. She said, "I thought you were just sad. I didn't know you were carrying all this." I said, "I didn't know how to say it." She said, "You don't have to say it anymore. I'm here." She hugged me. She didn't say anything else, but she stayed with me that whole weekend. We watched movies, we ate soup, we didn't talk much, but we didn't need to. I didn't go back to the garden for a week. I was afraid to look at it. I thought I would feel guilty for burying the truth, but when I finally went out there, I saw something different. The dirt was already starting to settle. A few small green shoots were pushing up from the soil. I didn't plant anything there, but something was growing. I didn't know what it was. I just sat on the bench near the roses. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I felt calm. I had told the truth. I had stopped hiding. I had stopped pretending. I didn't know if I had fixed anything, but I knew I had stopped lying to myself. I started talking to my children more. I asked them about their lives. I asked them how they felt. I didn't just nod and smile anymore. I listened. I cried with them. I told them I was sorry for being distant. I told them I didn't know how to be a mother when I didn't know how to be myself. They didn't blame me. They just held me. I started going to therapy. I didn't tell anyone at first. I just went. I talked about Robert. I talked about my mother. I talked about Thomas Riley. I talked about the baby I lost. I talked about the silence. I talked about the fear. I didn't hold back. I didn't hide. I cried. I screamed. I broke down. But I didn't stop. I kept going. I kept talking. I kept telling the truth. I started cleaning out Robert's things. I didn't do it all at once. I did it slowly. I took one drawer at a time. I kept his suits. I gave them to a charity. I kept his watch. I didn't bury it. I put it in a small box on my dresser. I didn't wear it. I just kept it. I kept the letters from him. I didn't burn them. I didn't throw them away. I kept them in a folder. I read them sometimes, not to feel sad, to remember what I had been through, to remember that I survived. I didn't forgive him. Not yet. But I stopped letting his lies control me. I stopped letting his betrayal define me. I started making decisions for myself. I sold the big house. I bought a smaller one. I moved into a place with a garden again. I planted new flowers, not roses, sunflowers. I planted them where the hole had been. I didn't think about Robert when I planted them. I thought about me. I thought about what I wanted. I thought about who I was becoming. I didn't need to bury my past anymore. I just needed to live my present. I still think about Robert sometimes. I don't hate him. I don't wish him harm. I just don't think about him every day anymore. I don't wake up wondering if he's okay. I don't lie awake wondering if he misses me. I don't wonder if he's happy with her. I don't care anymore. I don't need to know. I have my own life now. I have my own peace. I don't need his apology. I don't need his regret. I don't need his love. I have my own. I have my children. I have my grandkids. I have my garden. I have my books. I have my quiet mornings with coffee. I have my freedom. I made that vow in the garden that night. No more secrets, even if it destroyed me. And it did. It destroyed the life I had. It destroyed the marriage. It destroyed the image I had of myself. But it didn't destroy me. It rebuilt me. I am not the woman I was before Robert died. I am not the woman who buried his lies. I am the woman who dug them up. I am the woman who spoke the truth. I am the woman who chose to live. And that is enough. I still go to the garden every morning. I water the sunflowers. I sit on the bench. I watch the bees. I feel the sun on my face. I don't think about Robert. I don't think about the hole. I don't think about the letters. I think about the flowers. I think about the fact that they grow every year. I think about how they didn't need me to be perfect. They just needed me to show up, to water them, to give them light, to let them grow. I am like those flowers now. I am not the same. I am not broken. I am growing. I am alive. I am here. And I am not hiding anymore. I am not burying anything. I am standing in the sunlight, and I am proud of who I am. I am proud of the truth. I am proud of the woman I became after I stopped pretending. I am proud of the mother I am now. I am proud of the grandmother I am. I am proud of the woman who dug that hole and didn't run away. I am proud of the woman who chose to live even when she thought she couldn't. I am proud of me. It was a Tuesday afternoon in 2003. I was watering the roses in the front garden when I heard the knock. Not a polite tap, not a doorbell. A real knock. 3 times, firm and slow. I didn't recognize the voice when he said, "Mrs. Winthrop?" I turned around. A man stood there, late 40s maybe. His hair was thinning on top, but he had a strong jaw, the same shape as Robert's. His eyes were tired, like he hadn't slept well in a long time. He wore a faded blue jacket and jeans that were too big. He looked like a man who carried his weight in silence. "I'm Jamie," he said. "Robert's son." My hands went numb. I dropped the watering can. Water spilled on the grass. I didn't pick it up. I just stared. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I should slam the door. I didn't know if I should run. But I didn't move. I just nodded. "Come in," I said. He followed me inside. I didn't offer him a seat. I just walked to the kitchen and made tea. I didn't ask if he wanted sugar. I put 2 packets in his cup. I knew he'd take it. I didn't say anything while I poured. I sat down across from him. He looked at the table. He didn't look at me. I waited. Finally, he said, "I didn't know if you'd talk to me." I didn't answer. He took a breath. "My mom told me you were his wife. She said you were nice, but she never said you were real." I looked at him. I didn't say anything. He looked up. "I grew up in Waterville. We had a house with a leaky roof. My mom worked 2 jobs. We never had new clothes. We ate beans 3 times a week. Robert came every month. He gave her money. He bought me shoes. He took me to the movies once. He never stayed the night. He never called me by my name. He always said, 'How's the boy?' He didn't even know my favorite color." I swallowed. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I felt something heavier. Sadness. Not for him. Not for me. For the way we all lied to each other. I told him the truth. Not everything. Not the letters. Not the bank statements. Not the night I dug the hole in the garden. But I told him enough. I told him Robert never told me about him. Not until I found the photo. I told him Robert never told me he had another son. I told him I didn't know he was alive until I found out he was real. I told him I didn't know his mother's name until I saw it on the bank records. I told him I didn't know he existed until I saw him in the photo holding a fishing rod with Robert behind him. I told him I didn't know he was real until I saw his face. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't cry. He just sat there with his hands around the cup. When I finished, he looked at me. "You didn't know?" he asked. I shook my head. I didn't know. He nodded. "I thought you knew. I thought you were part of it." I didn't say anything. I didn't defend myself. I didn't say I was a victim. I just said, "I didn't know." He looked down again. I hated him for years. I thought he didn't care. I thought he chose her over me. I thought he was a coward. I looked at him. He was. He didn't flinch. He just nodded. "I know now." He took a sip of tea. "I don't hate him anymore. I just feel empty." I didn't say anything. I didn't try to fix it. I didn't tell him it was going to be okay. I just sat there with him in the silence. And then, without thinking, I stood up. "Come with me," I said. I led him outside. I walked to the back of the house. I stopped in front of the garden. The sunflowers were tall. The roses were blooming. The dirt was fresh. "He's not buried here," I said, "but his lies are." He looked at the ground. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. Then he put his hands on his face. He didn't sob. He didn't scream. He just cried. Quiet, long, deep. I cried too. Not because I felt sorry for him. Not because I felt guilty. I cried because I finally saw someone who understood. Someone who had been lied to too. Someone who had lost a father who was never really there. I didn't hug him. I didn't say, "I'm sorry." I just stood next to him. And for the first time since Robert died, I didn't feel alone in my pain. After he calmed down, we went back inside. He didn't stay long. He said he had to get back to work. He had a job at a warehouse. He lived with his mother. He said she was okay. She didn't talk about Robert anymore. She just worked. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't ask if I'd help him. He just said, "Thank you for telling me." I didn't say, "You're welcome." I just nodded. He left. I watched him walk to his car. It was an old Honda, painted blue, with a dent on the side. He didn't look back. He got in and drove away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about his face. I kept thinking about the way he said, "He's not buried here, but his lies are." I thought about my own lies. I thought about how I never told my children the whole truth. I thought about how I let Robert's secrets become mine. I thought about how I buried his things and pretended I was healing. But I wasn't healing. I was just hiding. I got up. I went to the desk. I took out a piece of paper. I wrote a letter. I didn't write to Jamie. I wrote to his mother. I didn't say I was sorry. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't say I was a good person. I just wrote, "We were both used. He used you. He used me. We both thought we were the one he loved. We were both wrong. We both raised children who never knew the truth. I don't blame you. I don't forgive you. I just want you to know this. Let's not let the children suffer for our mistakes. Let them grow up knowing they were loved, even if the man who gave them life wasn't worth it." I didn't sign my name. I just put the letter in an envelope. I mailed it. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't want one. I just needed to say it. I needed to say it out loud, even if it was only on paper. I didn't hear from Jamie again. I didn't look for him. I didn't check the news. I didn't wonder if he was okay. I didn't care if he ever came back. I didn't need him to. I had already said what I needed to say. I had already shown him the garden. I had already told him the truth. That was enough. I didn't need his forgiveness. I didn't need his gratitude. I didn't need him to understand me. I just needed him to know he wasn't alone. And I think he did. I think he knew. I didn't feel better after he left. I didn't feel healed, but I felt different, lighter. Not because I had fixed something, but because I had stopped pretending. I had stopped hiding behind the idea that I was the only one hurt. I had stopped acting like I was innocent. I had stopped pretending Robert's betrayal was only my problem. Jamie was proof that it wasn't, that Robert's lies had reached farther than I thought, that he had broken more than one life, that he had broken a son. And that made me realize something. I wasn't just a wife who lost her husband. I was a woman who had been part of a system of lies, and I had been silent for too long. I didn't fix anything by meeting Jamie, but I stopped being afraid of the truth, and that was enough. I didn't tell my children about Jamie. I didn't tell David. I didn't tell Margaret. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need to. I didn't want them to know how much I had hidden. I didn't want them to see me as someone who had lived with secrets for so long. I didn't want them to think I was weak. I didn't want them to think I was complicit. I didn't want them to think I had known and said nothing. So I kept it quiet. I kept Jamie's visit in my head. I kept it like a secret I didn't need to share. I didn't talk about it. I didn't write about it. I didn't cry about it. I just let it sit there, like a stone in my chest. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was just there, a fact, a moment, a truth. I didn't need to carry it. I just needed to know it was real, and it was. Jamie was real. His pain was real, his father was real, his life was real, and mine was real too. I didn't need to fix it. I didn't need to explain it. I just needed to remember it. And I did. Every day. When I watered the garden, when I made coffee in the morning, when I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. I remembered Jamie. I remembered his eyes. I remembered his voice. I remembered the way he said, "He's not buried here, but his lies are." And I knew then that I had finally stopped burying mine. I didn't go to the garden again for a long time, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't need to. I didn't need to dig. I didn't need to hide. I didn't need to prove anything. I had already done it. I had already shown him. I had already told him. I had already spoken the truth. I didn't need to do it again. I didn't need to relive it. I didn't need to feel the pain again. I had carried it long enough. I didn't feel guilty for not telling my children. I didn't feel bad for not reaching out to Jamie again. I didn't feel like I had failed. I felt like I had survived. I had faced a man who had been hurt by the same man who hurt me. And I didn't run. I didn't lie. I didn't hide. I sat with him. I gave him tea. I showed him the garden. And I let him cry. And he let me cry. And that was enough. That was more than enough. I didn't need to fix anything. I didn't need to make it right. I just needed to be there. And I was. And that was the first time I had ever been truly present in my own life. Not as a wife, not as a mother, not as a widow, just as a woman who had lived, who had suffered, who had spoken, and who had finally stopped pretending. I sold the Cliffside house in 2010, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stand to be there anymore. Every room held a memory that hurt. The dining room where Robert never looked at me. The bedroom where I cried myself to sleep for years. The hallway where I stood frozen the day I found him packing his bags with Linda. The stairs I climbed every night afraid to face another silent dinner. The garden where I buried his letters and his watch. I couldn't sleep in that house without hearing his voice in my head or seeing her face in the mirror. I packed everything slowly. I didn't throw anything away. I just boxed it up. His suits, his books, the china set we never used, the photo albums with our wedding, our children's birthdays, the vacations we never took. I kept nothing of his. I gave the furniture to a charity. I sold the car. I kept only my clothes, my books, my paintings, and the piano. I bought a small house on the edge of the water in Rockport. It had one bedroom, a kitchen, a living room with windows that faced the sea, and a tiny porch where I could sit in the morning with my coffee. No columns, no grand halls. No silence that pressed on my chest. Just me, the sound of the waves, and the quiet. I started playing the piano again. Not because I was good. I wasn't. I still hit the wrong notes. My fingers didn't move the way they used to. But I played anyway. Every evening after dinner, I sat on the bench. I played the same 3 songs over and over. Moon River, My Funny Valentine, Claire de Lune. I didn't know how to read music. I played by ear, trying to remember the little bits my mother used to play before she disappeared. I didn't care if I sounded bad. It was the only thing that made me feel like I was doing something for myself, not for anyone else. I stopped caring what people thought. I didn't invite anyone over. I didn't go to parties. I didn't pretend I was fine. I just played. And sometimes when the sun went down and the light hit the keys just right, I felt like I was talking to her. My mother, not with words, just with the music. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel alone. Margaret married a man named Daniel. He's quiet like Robert, but he doesn't hide. He asks how I am. He remembers my favorite tea. He calls me Mom, like he means it. He doesn't try to fix me. He just sits with me. He brought her to my house for Christmas the first year. She held my hand when I cried. She didn't say anything. She just held it. I never asked her about her mother. I didn't need to. I saw the way she looked at me, like she understood without me saying a word. Thomas became a teacher. He teaches history at the high school in town. He works long hours. He doesn't make much money. But he comes to see me every Sunday. He brings his kids. He lets them run through the house. He lets them jump on the couch. He doesn't care if I'm messy. He doesn't care if I haven't washed the dishes. He just sits with me and talks about his day. He tells me about the kids who don't have parents who care. He tells me about the ones who act out because they're scared. He says he sees me in them. I don't know if that's true, but I know he sees something in me, something real. Jamie comes every Christmas. He drives from his job in Ohio. He brings his wife and his 2 little girls. He doesn't call me Grandma. He doesn't call me Mrs. Winthrop. He just says, "Hi, Ellie." I don't call him son. I never have. But when he walks into my house, I hug him like I've been waiting for him all year. He sits with me while I make cookies. He helps me set the table. He lets the girls climb on my lap. He tells me about his job. He tells me about his daughter's first words. He doesn't ask me about Robert. He doesn't ask why I never remarried. He doesn't ask if I'm angry. He just lets me be. One year, he brought me a small wooden box. Inside was a single piano key, polished smooth. "I found it in the old house," he said. "I thought you might want it." I didn't say thank you. I just held it in my hand. I still keep it on my nightstand. I touch it every night before I sleep. I don't know why, but I do. I didn't fix anything. I couldn't bring Robert back. I couldn't undo the years I spent pretending I was happy. I couldn't make my mother come home. I couldn't make Linda apologize. I couldn't make Jamie's father love him. I couldn't make David's wife forgive her mother. I couldn't make the past disappear. But I could choose what to do with the present. I could choose to live. I could choose to be honest. I could choose to stop hiding. I stopped wearing the clothes I thought I should wear. I stopped pretending I liked the food I didn't like. I stopped saying I'm fine when I wasn't. I stopped letting other people's expectations shape my life. I started saying no. I started saying I don't want to. I started saying I need this. I started going to the beach alone. I started reading books I didn't think I was smart enough for. I started painting things that made me happy, not things that looked nice. I stopped trying to be perfect. I stopped trying to be someone else's idea of a good woman. I became who I was, flawed, scarred, tired, angry, sad, but mine, not Robert's, not Michael's, not my father's, not even my mother's. Mine. I don't miss the big house. I don't miss the money. I don't miss the respect people gave me because of my last name. I miss the quiet. I miss the smell of salt air. I miss the way the light hits the kitchen at 5 p.m. I miss the sound of my own breathing when I'm alone. I miss knowing that I am enough. I don't need a husband to validate me. I don't need children to give me purpose. I don't need a house to prove I mattered. I am enough. I always was. I just forgot. And now I remember. I don't need to fix the past. I don't need to punish the people who hurt me. I don't need to get revenge. I don't need to explain myself. I just need to be here, in this house, with this piano, with these books, with these memories, with these scars. And I am not broken. I am not lost. I am not empty. I am whole. I am Eleanor Winthrop, and I am finally, truly mine. I'm 62 now. I sit here every morning in this sunroom, the one with the big windows that face the water. I don't have a fancy chair. I have a simple wooden one, the kind you buy at the hardware store. It creaks a little when I shift, but it's mine. I drink Earl Grey, not because it's fancy, but because it's warm and smells like tea, not like perfume or regret. The wind comes in through the open window, not like a breeze you write poems about. It's just air, cool, a little salty, moving the curtains a little. I don't care if it's perfect. I like that it's real. I didn't write this story to make people feel sorry for me. I didn't write it to say, look how bad I had it. I wrote it because for 30 years, I carried it all inside. The lies, the silence, the nights I cried into my pillow so no one would hear. The mornings I forced myself to smile at Michael before he left for work, even though I knew he was lying. The way I looked at Linda at family dinners and pretended I didn't see the way she smiled at him. I carried it all like a stone in my chest. I didn't know how to put it down. So I told you. Not because I needed you to say I was brave. I didn't need you to say anything. I needed to say it out loud, to myself, to the room, to the wind, to prove to myself that I was still here, that I didn't disappear, that I didn't break. I just changed. I'm not proud of everything I did. I let myself be quiet for too long. I ignored the signs. I blamed myself. I thought if I was just nicer, just quieter, just more patient, he'd come back to me. I stopped wearing the clothes I liked. I stopped saying what I wanted. I stopped asking for things. I thought love meant giving up yourself. I thought being a good wife meant never complaining. I was wrong. I wish I had known sooner. But I didn't. And I lived it. I lived the silence. I lived the betrayal. I lived the shame. I lived the fear that I was too old to start over. I lived the thought that maybe I deserved it. I carry those mistakes. I don't hide them. I don't pretend they didn't happen. But I don't let them own me anymore. I'm proud I didn't kill myself. I'm proud I didn't disappear into a bottle. I'm proud I didn't spend the rest of my life hating them. I'm proud I didn't let them turn me into someone bitter. I didn't become the woman who talks about her ex every time someone asks how she is. I didn't become the woman who can't watch a wedding without crying. I didn't become the woman who only sees betrayal in every smile. I got up. I washed my face. I made coffee. I walked outside. I planted flowers. I went to dance class. I got a job I didn't need, but I wanted. I learned to say no. I learned to say I don't care. I learned to say I'm fine and mean it. I didn't do it all at once. I did it one day at a time. Some days I cried. Some days I couldn't get out of bed. Some days I ate cereal for dinner because I didn't feel like cooking. That's okay. I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to keep going. I don't have a big house anymore. I don't wear expensive jewelry. I don't go to fancy dinners. I don't care. My house is small. My clothes are simple. My car is 10 years old. But it's mine. Everything I have now, I earned by being honest with myself. The money I got back from Michael, I saved it. I didn't spend it on a new car or a trip to Europe. I put it in a bank account. I didn't touch it for a year. Then I used it to pay for my first painting class. Then I used it to buy a new pair of shoes that didn't pinch my feet. Then I used it to help David with a down payment on his house. I didn't do it for him. I did it because I could. Because I had something that was mine, and I got to decide what to do with it. That felt better than any diamond ring ever did. I don't think about Michael every day anymore. Sometimes I do. I see an old man on the street who walks like he did. I smell cinnamon coffee. I hear a song we used to dance to, and for a second, I feel the old pain. But it doesn't stay. It doesn't grab me. It doesn't pull me under. It just passes through me like a cloud. I don't hate him. I don't wish him bad things. I don't want him to suffer. I just don't want him in my life. He chose his path. I chose mine. We're not on the same road anymore. And that's fine. I don't need him to be sorry. I don't need him to call. I don't need him to understand. I understand myself now. And that's enough. I have my grandkids. My daughter-in-law, Jessica, calls me every Sunday. We talk for an hour. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we laugh. She tells me about her therapy. She tells me about how she's learning to forgive her mother, but not forget. She tells me how proud she is of me. I don't say, I told you so. I say, I'm here. My son David comes over every other weekend. He brings the kids. They run through the house yelling. They knock over my books. They spill juice on my rug. I don't care. I love it. I love their noise. I love their mess. I love that they don't know what a broken marriage looks like. I love that they will never have to live it. My granddaughter Emily, named after me, just started kindergarten. She drew a picture of us last week, me holding her hand. She wrote Granny under it. I framed it. I put it on the wall next to my paintings. It's not a masterpiece, but it's real. I don't know if I'll ever love again. I don't know if I'll ever trust someone like that again. I don't know if I want to. I've learned that I don't need someone else to make me whole. I am whole. I was always whole. I just forgot. I forgot because I let someone else's voice drown out mine. I forgot because I thought love meant giving up your voice. I was wrong. Love shouldn't make you smaller. It should help you grow. I'm not looking for love anymore. I'm looking for peace. And I have it. I wake up in the morning and I don't dread the day. I go to bed at night and I don't replay the past. I don't have a perfect life. I have a quiet one, a simple one, a true one. I'm not proud because I got revenge. I'm not proud because I got my money back. I'm proud because I didn't let them take my soul. I didn't let them make me believe I wasn't worth more. I didn't let them make me believe I was too old to change. I didn't let them make me believe I had to stay quiet. I got up. I kept going. I showed up for myself. I didn't wait for someone to save me. I saved me. That's not perfection. That's persistence. That's showing up every day, even when you're tired, even when you're scared, even when you think you can't. That's not magic. That's just being a woman who refused to disappear. If you're listening to this and you're hurting right now, I want you to know something. You are not broken. You are not a mistake. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are here, and that means you are still fighting, and that means you are still alive, and that means you still have a chance. I didn't win because I was strong. I won because I didn't quit. I didn't give up. I kept breathing. I kept getting up. I kept choosing me, and that's all you have to do. Just keep choosing you, one day at a time, one breath at a time, one cup of tea at a time. You don't need a big story. You don't need a perfect ending. You just need to keep going. And when you do, you'll look back one day and realize, I survived. And that's the most powerful thing you can ever say. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If this story touched your heart, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more real stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.